My name is Dave Carter. I'm a Vice President for Recruiting, Staffing, and Business Development with ReliaSource Incorporated. ReliaSource will define cybersecurity based on the requirements we have from customers. It's probably the most direct way to say that. Specifically, we are very interested in software backgrounds for people, but it's an interesting mix that we find for most of our clientele at this point in time because we're seeking signal intelligence backgrounds as well as software backgrounds. So to get a little more precise, software-wise, we're interested in object-oriented experiences, Java, C++, things of that nature are the most in demand when you're looking for technical skills in cybersecurity for our clients. Software specific is really, everyone wants to have Java background as much as you can find, as talented as you can find, as well trained as you can find. C++ is still an important area. There are other tools that are specific to the signal intelligence side that come from work in intelligence analyst type of roles and things like that, but they're technical. They're IT specific. From a certification standpoint, we're probably most interested in people that have CEH and GREM backgrounds. It's an interesting mix that we look for in some of our most challenging roles for malware analysis, because you're looking for people that have dealt with raw traffic type of analysis, considerations like that, and those certifications are extraordinarily useful and important to do that well. Ideally, you've got people that are coming with the tickets, with the background that you're looking for. We do have an educational program, however, that pays/reimburses people for taking those, and it's a process that we go through to have people stick around with our company for a pretty significant period of time, along with what we try to do for them from a career development and opportunity standpoint. For people with the most experience, the mix of experience I've talked a little bit about before with CEH, GREM, the reverse engineering kinds of backgrounds, those people are in very short supply. In an overall sense, there is, I think, a real dearth of numbers of people that have, call it significant experience in the 2+ year range at this point in time. There's an awful lot of newly minted cybersecurity people coming out. What we're finding with a number of our clients is that a lot of those folks don't necessarily fit into what they need to have done from a communication standpoint, where they may very well have a solid amount of training. They're not necessarily prepared to deal with other aspects of the role that are very important as well. For most of our clients, there's an awful lot of entry-level stuff for large aerospace defense contractors, primes. We are a 12-year-old, smaller organization, but very well established, very diverse, DoD, intelligence community, some civilian work, and we have cybersecurity people in all those areas. So most of the folks that we're looking for are going to have more, we'll call it real professional background than developed educationally, but untested, so to speak. Our best tool is really clearancejobs.com. We are power users is what we would describe ourselves for those licenses, and we are very much focused on developing relationships with people. There's very little in the way of blast emails, none whatsoever, really. It's individual contacts and multiple contacts to develop some background and rapport, really learn what somebody is looking for in an opportunity. Most people that obviously come to Clearance Jobs are in some manner interested in seeing what's out there. We take great advantage of that, and we're pretty good at it. We are very active contactors of confidential candidates, but our messages are individualized to people that are confidential candidates that we send through the mechanism that you have with Clearance Jobs. We tell people specifically about opportunities. We're not giving them too much in the way of financial information, but we really want to talk with people for a particular need for our client that have backgrounds, tools, maybe military or service experience as well. because most of what we do is affiliated with customers that are DoD, U.S. government, in the cybersecurity arena. I did mention we've got some other things too, but that's the bulk of our work. We improve on it by condensing it. Much of the time what we're working on is pretty highly cleared stuff. So those need to be not sanitized. You have to be able to give somebody some indication of actually what you're doing, even if you can't talk specifically about mission or geography or a number of different things that aren't going to be part and parcel of that conversation. So the tools that we're looking for, some of the background maybe professionally that we're looking for, and we build that into a couple of sentences or a very, very short paragraph that basically says this is the role that we're seeking a person for. We're looking for this client to perform these X, Y, and Z's in this setting for this reason. And a lot of times you don't get into customer or contract or things like that. It's obviously a very competitive marketplace for those types of things. But we're almost always following up with phone calls if we've got telephone information. There's a lot of time for our ReliaSource recruiters spent on the phone in the evenings with candidates because that's when they're much more comfortable speaking. A lot of them are in secure facilities, so they can't talk during the day. They're not able to receive texts or phone calls or anything like that. So it's a decision to be very quality focused as well as making sure that you're making numbers of contacts. Your tool has a lot of good information in terms of check marks that people can put in there. Folks that are anonymous that say they're actively seeking something versus passively seeking something, we're going to go to the active people much before we go to the passive people. The passive people we're going to that are denoted as such. They've self-nominated as that. That's you're not expecting as high a batting average on those kinds of things, but you go to those people in the same manner with the same kind of information because they've got some measure of statement about what they want, what they're interested in, numbers and things like that. And you oftentimes get into that once you get somebody on the telephone, but generally we want to focus on what the content is, what the mission is. A lot of times that's, I think, maybe the most important part of interesting someone, of really determining whether someone wants to jump into the mix with you or not, is what the mission is, because just about everything that people are doing in cyber security, cyber settings, offensive, defensive, whatever the case may be, has something to do with, it's obviously security, but it's national in scope for the things that we do, and there's maybe no more important mission than that these folks could be working on. Number one, far and away, is compensation, salary. That's where you really are able to differentiate yourself from position to position, contract to contract, customer to customer, maybe end customer, the government entity, that type of thing. But we have to, our crew of recruiters is very experienced for the most part, and there's an understanding that if there's just a financial motivation on the part of any particular candidate, that's a financial motivation and a top line motivation that's going to continue whether you get them a 10% increase or a 20% increase. The next person that calls 4 to 6 months later is maybe going to get the same kind of response, and that's not what we're looking to build for ReliaSource. Part of what we're really offering folks that we think resonates is a small growing company. We've been growing even through these challenging times over the last couple of years through sequestration and the like. We're putting out there the opportunity to grow within our small company and make it larger, be a leader, help to develop additional business, be rewarded for that. So it does go back to a reward. It does go back to a financial reward. We've got a very solid benefits plan. We think that's something that's very, very interested, particularly for family people. We do have a solid set of investment and retirement opportunities and offerings that people can get into. That's not necessarily the norm in contract organizations, particularly the small to mid-sized contract organizations. We're pretty flexible with time. We are moving to more of a flex time versus a vacation, sick, personal, that type of thing. And most people are very interested in that type of thing. It's really the whole package, but what we really try and focus on first and foremost in determining whether somebody's for our clientele, for our customers, is whether they're going to get into the work, the mission, the role. And somewhere in there, beyond just the dollars and cents, there's got to be a check mark in that box. Well, sometimes by the incentive type of structure that I was just referring to, there is absolutely no question that the contracting world, the primes, the subs, all the way down the food chain are getting squeezed by tighter budgets, more challenging distribution of resources, tougher to get those resources. The way we're dealing with it is basically telling people that the world is changing. There's a phrase out there that I talk to people about all the time, an acronym, since we got, scores and scores of acronyms that we deal with. It's LPTA. Most people that I speak to in technology types of roles don't really hear about LPTA. It's more an acquisition and business development type of acronym, but it's lowest price technically acceptable. And there's a fair number of people that we engage as candidates that we start talking to about that. It's one of those things that they're putting back there because that might actually impact their income, their way of life, their standard of living. And so education, real engagement, real honesty, right from the get-go is the way we find that we win the day. But, we run a lot of numbers. Sometimes our batting average is really high, Hall of Fame kind of levels. At other times, it's not quite as high.